I discovered you guys online, and Slaughter was my introduction to the band. Very iconic album. I'd love to know what the writing and recording process was for Slaughter in the Vatican.
Nightmarish. So most of that album was actually on our very first demo, Get Rude. The majority of songs, at least half of the songs were on Get Rude. And then that was we recorded we did like a little tiny 3 song demo that's vanished. That was our first demo. We never sold it. We just recorded it and it just vanished. But Get Rude was our first actual demo that we would sell at shows. And really primitive 8-track recording, down and dirty, as an early demo from the 80s would be, that you would think. And then we went into a real studio and did the demo of Slaughter in the Vatican, which had every song on it except for The Tragic Period, which was written after the band broke up in early 1988. So fast forward, we reformed, started playing, got the attention of a record label, and went into the studio to record. Well, we recorded the songs too fast. That was a problem. Those songs on that album are played way too fast. If you go back and listen to the Slaughter in the Vatican demo on YouTube, you'll see what I mean.
Hmm,
The grooves kind of disappear when it gets played too fast. So there's a lot of our groove that's missing on that album. Uh, and I know people like refer to that album as an iconic masterpiece, timeless, blah blah blah. And I'll never try to take that away from anybody for feeling that way, but that whole process was marred by error. We re-recorded all of the guitars.
wow.
We re-recorded the bass. We re-recorded the drums. We re-recorded the vocals. So the only thing that remains from the original session is the tempos, and they're too fast. So
Wow.
I don't know. I've
Interesting.
had people ask me, why don't y'all go back and re-record that album properly? And I was like, why? You know, I, I've recorded the song Legions of Death. I have recorded one, two, three, 4 times already. Not including the throwaway tracks that I had to, that we gave up. It's been on a finished product 4 times. I don't need to record that song again. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
I'd rather
Yeah.
move forward and focus on new material. And again, I don't want to tarnish anybody's idea of what that album is, and people might think I'm crazy, but yeah, that album, when it came out, we had a dream of what we wanted it to sound like, and it didn't sound like what we envisioned. So and
Interesting.
we I think we failed even worse on the law. That was even bigger nightmare, for a lot of reasons. We just weren't prepared going into the studio for that album. We had to rob the Get Rude demo of some songs. We had to put a Black Sabbath song in there because we didn't have enough material. We were writing new material in the studio. We had
Wow.
guitar tone issues. Half the guitar tones didn't even make it to the album because they
Huh.
sounded terrible. So More Than the Southern Skies was the first time sonically that we hit on all cylinders, I think. And I feel like
Wow.
on Defectum Omnium we've done the same thing. We just keep improving our sound.
Wow, that's crazy to hear, man. How did RC Records treat you in terms of like studio time and a budget for Slaughter?
Um I think it was a $5,000 budget, which probably
Wow.
today would be somewhere in the ten to $15,000 range, which you can make an album on. But at the time, home studio wasn't an option. So you had to go into a studio and you had to pay the studio time, and that's not cheap. So I don't know. I know we went over budget on both albums, and RC paid for it, but I don't know. The owner of that label hated us, and Monty Connor loved us, so he did everything he could to protect us. But eventually, the owner had enough after the law and dropped us. So we had a tough go in the beginning. We were a band that we always had great results live, and that was definitely always one of the best things about Exhorter was the live show. It still is, I think. And I don't know, we just could never capture it on the album back then. And I think if we had been able to do that and maybe worked a little harder, we would have had a lot more success.
Interesting. Yeah, and I know they micromanaged too. Like I know was the original the cover for the demo of Slaughter, was that supposed to be what the actual cover was
Yeah,
supposed to be? Oh yeah.
yeah, and they refused to use it. So looking back now, it's like there's so many worse album covers that have come out since then. Like I think the thing that they really wanted to avoid was it wasn't just the Pope. It was actually John Paul, Pope John Paul II, who is better known today as Saint John Paul II.
Yeah, yeah.
So we literally have a saint, an actual saint hanging from our logo in front of a burning Vatican while children and women are crying and praying at his feet. It's awful. Uh, and you know, I think the album cover, the way it came out, it's grown on me. I think I didn't like it at first, uh, but I think now I've got a special place in my heart for it. I think the artist Ken Matthew, who did that, I think he probably took a beating from us early on that we didn't like it. But I, rest assured, Ken, I think it's a great album cover, and I'm grateful to have had him do it.
I've seen it
But
on a lot of shirts.
it was much safer than what we wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely that first demo, the cover of that's brutal compared to the actual.
What's crazy to me is there's a band from the '80s called Christian Death, and
Uh-huh.
they had an album cover where, if I remember correctly, there was Christ was on the album cover, and his arms were full of hypodermic needles, and he's sitting there
Yeah,
like this
yeah.
with hypodermic needles. And I saw it on the rack at Kmart, and I remember them saying Kmart won't sell your album, and I was like, you can trash and destroy Christ all you want, but leave the Pope alone. That made no sense to me.
Yeah, the
The
irony.
Pope's more valued than Christ? You got to be kidding me. Christianity, ladies and gentlemen.